We're going to make a forged link bracelet out of 1.5 millimeter wire. I don't do gauge. About the only two places left in the world that do gauge are the US and the UK. Tim McCrate's book has a good conversion chart in the back. 1.5, so roughly 14 gauge. I won't convert. I'm used to working with metric. If you have a digital caliper, it has inches and millimeters on it, so it will convert for you. When you're using this, always make sure that it's zeroed every time, because it's quite easy. I mean, you can bump it if you get on the wrong measurement. It'll make everything completely wonky, so always check that it's measured. So this is Tim McCrate, The Complete Metalsmith. It's a good beginner's book. This little project I'm doing, I think, came from Art Jewelry magazine. I'm not sure. You can get this online now, where you don't have to pay international shipping. It's quite handy. We'll start by cutting 9 pieces of wire, and this is 1.5 diameter, remember. So the first piece, file the end flat with your number 2 cut flat hand file. Set your chenille cutter at 24 millimeters, which is an inch in imperial. I know a few of them. And just make sure that the wire butts up against the end. You saw down through the little slot. The small slot is where the saw blade goes through, and it will give you an exact length every time. Very handy. You just hold this down with your thumb. It's a bit awkward if you're left-handed, but what you can do is you can set this up in your GRS bench vise. You unscrew the wooden handle, and this clamps in the vise, and that way it's quite easy for you to hold it and saw. So just hold this against your bench peg. 9 of these. When you get these all cut, move over to your anvil. You can use a bench block. Anything that's steel and shiny is good. And make sure it's shiny, because your hammer and your block should both look like what you want your metal to look like when you're done. So whatever you hit the metal with, it's going to leave that impression on it, and whatever you hit it on is going to leave that impression on it. So just hold the wire over your anvil, hammer the end to half its thickness, so now all of your pieces should look like this, with one end plain and the other end hammered out. And now take a sanding stick with 400 grade sandpaper on it and just tidy up the ends. It shouldn't take much, because when you cut it, you have a nice square end, and then when you forged it, they should all be pretty close to the same. But just for aesthetics, tidy that up a little bit. Now take a center punch. I'm using an automatic one, but you can just use a hammer and a punch. Put the metal on your bench plate, and in the largest part, in the middle, put a mark. If you're a little bit off, turn it over, mark the other side. And if you put your punch at a bit of an angle, you can actually see where the point is. Straighten it up, punch it. Do all of them. We're going to drill these now. I'm using a Fordham pendant drill. We'll start with a 1 millimeter drill bit, and then we'll go to 1.2 and then 1.5. So just hold this on your bench peg, and the drill should go through really quickly. If it doesn't, it's probably dull or you're not pushing quite hard enough. So go in steps because it's better to go in small steps. That way the drill bit doesn't catch the metal and try to spin it around. And now our 1.5. And if you're worried about this catching and spinning around, use your parallel jaw pliers to hold the metal. And anytime you're using any tool that spins, safety glasses, in my case I wear glasses, so as long as you have something between your eyes and the spinning metal, and it doesn't matter whether it's a polisher or this, or anything, any piece of machinery, grinder, anything that spins, have eye protection on. Yep, so now we have all of our holes. At this point, check to make sure that your wire goes through the hole. And that's the whole object of drilling the holes. Now we're going to tidy these holes up just by using a burr in our pendant drill. And you want it bigger than the hole, but we're just going to taper the edge just a little bit to get rid of the rough metal. So just hold it in your fingers and clean all of the holes. At this point, we're going to put a 6 millimeter mark on the end and bend all of your links. What I do is I mark my pliers so that I can just stick the end of the wire in. I know it's at the right spot and I don't have to measure every one. So what I do is I take an abrasive cutoff disc to put the mark in the jaws. Because this is a 6 millimeter mark and it's a fairly common size, it's quite easy to use it for many different things, and it doesn't hurt the pliers. At this point, the flat part of this should be in line with the flat top of your pliers, and you can either push it up or down, and you can use your fingers or push it against anything hard. We just want a nice tight 90-degree bend. So do all of your links. I'm using a Smith's mini torch for this, gas and oxy. If you have a regular LPG air torch, I don't think you're going to be able to do this because your flame is too big. So what you can do is, instead of placing your piece on a charcoal block and directing a small hot flame from the side, what you can do is hang this from your third hand, shift the link down like that so that it's out of the way, and then you can direct the heat at this to melt a ball on the end without melting the other part. But I'm going to show you how to do this with the mini torch. So set your link one at a time, assemble your link, and position this so that the wire is straight up and down, and I'll use a third hand to just rest against the end to hold it in place. Adjust your flame. We use a neutral flame for almost everything. So I'm using a number 7 tip neutral flame, and I'm going to run the flame across this way. Don't go straight up and down because you'll melt the two links together. So go right up to the inner blue tip. You don't have to put flux on this. The metal will melt down into a nice little ball, and that's it. Put the next link on, do it. Put the next link on, do it. Quench this. You don't have to pickle it, but quench, and then when you get to the end, we'll pickle the whole thing. When you get to the end of your bracelet, you'll realize that you'll have one of these on one end and one with a hole in the other end. The way we're going to finish it, that's not much good. Clip that off. Clip that 6mm bit off. Forge this end so that it looks like this one, and drill your hole just like you did this one. And then at this point, we'll make 2 jump rings and a hook. We're going to make our hook first, 45mm. And if you're used to the old imperial method, you can get these steel rules that have both metric and imperial on them. So 45mm, 1 3/4 inches, and cut this with your saw.